Pricing Masters, second season, second episode. How to calculate the value of your product and set the price on it. Pretty serious topic, isn't it?
Serious, important, and hard, I would say.
Because value is what you get, no? Price is what you...
Value is what you get, price is what you pay, right? So there's the difference between them both.
And I think we can introduce the framework where we can actually translate or explain why the value is not just a marketing blah, 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 but it is a fundamental thing while calculating your pricing and while delivering your pricing.
Yeah. So let's start from the fundamental framework, which is the value waterfall. And this is something that we at Value Ships and generally people that have experience in pricing believe. So every product, every service in the world creates a certain amount of value. There's like the first thing is like the value that the product actually creates. So it is determined by the quality of the relationship we have with the client, the product quality itself. But every product creates a certain pool of value, right?
So it's a value pool.
Yeah, it's a value pool, exactly. So this is like our max, 100%.
Then, so for example, if you read the whole manual of the car, you know what is the full value.
Yeah. Or at least you know which light means what when something turns on. So might be useful. Like the reds are bad, the yellow are okay. This is what I know. Having said that, next, this is the value that your customers, again, I mentioned relationship. This is the value that you know, your customers know what they are getting out of the product. But new customers, for instance, but also even existing customers, exactly, they didn't read the whole manual and they are not sure there is a certain amount of unseen value. So this is the moment in which you show, like, this is what your customer believes about your product. And this is heavily determined by how well you're communicated it to the customer. So one thing is to show it when you're selling the product to someone. It's a great product, this will solve the problem, this will bring you revenue, whatever. And the second thing is, hey, because of the fact that you are using our product, we have granted you X in revenue. We have run 500 successful email campaigns. You have achieved significant reduction in cost decrease, stuff like this. And then once we have the actual value created, then there's a perceived value lower usually than the first one. Then you have something that we're calling the value erosion, which is not matching the value, the subjective perception of the value with creme de la creme of pricing, which is
willingness to pay. I know.
You got it.
So you can tell, just to make sure we're all on the same page. One can tell that the more value you create, the more willingness to pay you are able to achieve.
One thing is to create value. This is the actual, and the second is to communicate this value to the customer. So
the more you create, the more you communicate, or the better you communicate, the higher willingness to pay you're able to achieve.
Yeah, so you can increase the value, not communicate it properly, and still you end up with the same willingness to pay. But if you increase the value, increase the perception, build upon this, you can boost the willingness to pay, right? Because this is what I'm getting. So it's a waterfall that we're...
This is actually why it is...
This is actually why it's a waterfall, right?
Waterfall. I think that the target price and the realized price we've mentioned in our previous episode, but what is fundamental here is that the interrelations between the value and the willingness to pay. So if we know that the value is directly correlated or might be directly correlated with willingness to pay, hence the price, I think the next question is how to calculate the value.
Yeah, so when we are discussing about this, the value is actually super easy to calculate, but what we also need to we need to focus on is when we are talking about the willingness to pay as a concept, you need to understand that this is influenced by four things. One is perceived value, as I mentioned. Second is the expectations towards the ROI, return on the investment. Also comparables that we have and budgets. And while
Comparables meaning your competitor.
yes, correct. And while we don't have the influence on comparables because they are on the market, we don't necessarily have the influence over our client's budget because it is as is. We can work on ROI expectations and perceived value, right? And with this kind of thinking in mind, we need to get into something that we are calling economic value analysis, aka EVA. It is the chart that we are displaying right now. And this is an essence of how to build a business case, a value equation.
It's actually, funny when thinking about this, because this is just the way of thinking. I have the feeling that, cost or competitor-based pricing is the aspect when you think about the price bottom-up.
Correct.
Then thinking about the value, this is where top-down thinking comes.
This is customer-centric. You put the customer problems, customer challenges, struggles, jobs to be done again into the actual product/pricing related situation.
And then, okay, but let's focus on the calculation. So we know that expected ROI is important.
This is the first thing that you need to calculate. So let me give you an example. So imagine that we have a cost-reducing solution in the one that we have displayed on the chart. Annual, for instance, you have 500 million, and imagine that your product is a magical widget that you just plug into the power grid and it just works. It's pure magic, okay? And this power grid reduces electricity cost, right? This is strong value proposition. So annual cost of this company, and you run this value conversation with the customers. If you want to learn more about value conversations, leave us a comment, and we'll record an episode based on that. But you run this value conversation with the customer. You talk to them. Okay, so during the sales process, so what is your annual cost base? 5 million, right? Give or take. Okay, and of this 5 million annual cost, what is the share of the electricity cost that you have? Give or take 1 million electricity cost, because we are heavily dependent. Yeah, 20%, we're heavily dependent. So you already know that the value share, the value pool that you're operating on is not 5 mil, it's 1 million, right? Because you're directly focused on the electricity costs, right?
This is what you can optimize with your solution.
Correct. This is the job my solution is actually doing for you. And we know, and this is important, based on our previous implementations, based on the benchmarks that we might have, based on the client testimonials, or based on pure assumptions, which are also fine, which is like the 4 data inputs that you can use in this, we know that we can reduce about 20% of this cost.
This is the knowledge that we should have developed during our product development, based on our experience.
Correct, yeah.
If you are a new product, for example, and you want to use the value calculation, you can use the assumption, but remember to gather the knowledge in time, right? So during your first implementation, make sure to have a baseline, see how your product influenced the baseline, so the next value conversation that you're having with your client is not based on the assumption, but based on the case study.
Yeah, there are like 4, as I said, there are 4 data sets that you can use. First, your internal product data. So you're actually seeing what changed in the on the client, in terms of when we're talking about SaaS, we're talking about product or even service. What actually has changed? What change did we bring to the table effectively? Second is like the client data that we have from the platform. But second is like what client said, that with the value shifts we have managed to increase our revenue by 23%. And we have testimonials like this, so we can use this social proof to boost our perceived value and potentially value proposition, right?
Expected ROI of the client.
Correct, yes. And this is something that we're actually using at Value Ships. The third thing is benchmarks, reports. So the solutions like this allow to decrease costs by X%. So, there are like a lot of benchmarks, reports from the consulting companies, Gartner's, Forrester's, McKinsey's, BCG's of the world, this is something that you can use. And as you said, fourth is the guesstimation assumption, but make a sound just or a promise, but make a sound judgment. It's like, hey, how can we build this assumption? And I'm always reverting like, Uno reverse with a very simple, okay, but what if you made this very simple 1% change? And if you build the value proposition around 1% change, this is super believable. This is something that might be tangible as well, and you can build on that. A good assumption is sometimes better than wrong data.
So we have so we know what data we should use, and we have this client with 1 million in cost.
Yeah, 20% reduction, meaning that we are delivering 200K annually of pure value to the. So this is coming that we talk at the estimated value to the customer, and based on that, depending on the expected ROI that the customer has, let's say that they are expecting a 500%, which is a good benchmark, by the way. You can build a price based on that, which is about 20% in this case, meaning that if I'm bringing, or let's say give or take 10%, right, to make it easier. So we have 200K clear value. We just take 10%, which is something that I believe that you need to have a 10x impact on something to justify your fees, which is a game changer, in other words. So our fees are 20K, and this is how the subscription costs, and you'll get 180 back out of this 200 that we have built together.
So you basically start top down with showing the tangible effect of your work to the client, and then you derive the price from it.
And there is a framework for that.
And thinking about this, before we go, just 1 minute before we go to the framework, I think calculating the value and how it worked with my clients was important to them, not only in the world of pricing, but also in the world of marketing and in the world of sales. And you can see different benchmarks. You can read about different benchmarks from books, you can listen them in the podcast. But what I have seen with my clients is that if you show the clear value to your clients, the sales process is easier and faster.
Correct.
Because clients see the efficiency that you can produce, so they want to have it now to stop losing money. This is the first thing. And also it helps with the conversion. I remember one client that we had that I think mentioned in the previous pricing masters, when we just changed the claim from the vague value proposition to we will save 7% or 10% of your employee cost, and the conversion increased by 30%.
Yeah, so there's one case, and second case was Timecamp again, that we had the easy time tracking software hero on the landing page. We have changed it into increase your project's profitability with time tracking or easy time tracking, something like this. But the conversion surged by like 9%, 8.7, I think. So it was a pretty good trade-off considering that you have changed 8 words.
Yes.
And they have like a lot of traffic on the website, so you can do the math. How it actually converted to clean revenue that is coming from this leads.
So thinking about this, calculating the value is helpful for pricing. Of course, it will not necessarily derive the price from it always. Sometimes it's more effective to run PSM or something like this other research method. Nevertheless, it will be always useful for you for sales, for marketing, and also to introduce or translate why your pricing is like this, why your price is so high or so low. And then thinking about this, you said that we are generating 200,000 in savings for our client. And thinking or talking to my clients, they always bring the question, okay, so how much of the value I can take? Can I take 50%, 10%, 20%? And in the slide that you currently see on the screen, there is a good framework that actually helps in this conversation.
Value sharing matrix.
Exactly. So on the horizontal axis, you can see your contribution, right? So how big, how direct is the contribution to your success? So is there a next best alternative to solve this problem? Is there any competitor that is coming to the table and has the very similar solution that can also bring savings? Maybe there is something better. And the bigger and the more direct your contribution is, the more value you can take. So this is one aspect.
So the contribution is effectively how much of the burden and effort I'm taking out of your plate. This is why I mentioned that the widget is pure magic, that it just works automatically. So the more your customer needs to work with your product, the less contribution you're actually bringing, because there is a work involved in it, right? So this is why AI is so powerful nowadays, and might be, that it really automates many of the things that previously, even if you had the tools, you had to do them manually, right?
Yes. And then second aspect of the value matrix is tangibility of the value that you are creating. So in your case, it is super tangible. You plug it in, you save 200K in 1 year. This is very tangible. But sometimes the value you are creating is very intangible. Think about lead management, for example, or if there is a software that brings you more leads, you need to convert those leads to money, right? Because the cash at the end is king. So of course it is tangible. You see more leads. Nevertheless, the final effect is, so to say, postponed. So the more you can show that you are bringing the money to the table with the solution, the more value you can take. And in the grid, you can see that if the direct contribution to the success is super high, and if you can tell that this is thanks to you and this is super tangible, the more value you can take. The best companies that I have seen can take up to 50% of the value. This is extremely rare. Typically, I see companies that are taking 1 to 2% of the value, and I think this is frequently a mistake. That is why typically when you think about the pricing project, you rather increase the prices than decrease the prices.
In 8 or 10 cases.
Yes. And then how we are trying to translate the value for our clients to the price is where they are taking around 20%, 10 to 20% of the value they are creating, which is in your case from 10 to 20.
Yeah. So for the most companies I have seen, they are somewhere between
at least 10 to 40.
Yeah, exactly.
No, 20.
So for the companies I have seen, this is about 10. Getting a 10% is already a complete game changer. The best companies I've seen are 20. I still believe 50-50 split is a kind of golden benchmark, some kind of...
You should aspire
to, something that you can calculate every single year. How does that compare to value? And this is like kind of more about complex value management in the organizations. And there are exercises like this, but tangibility and contribution to the success, these are like two very powerful axes that you can play on. And what I would recommend, and this is something that we would end the episode with, so the kind of recommendations and kind of parting words is like, try thinking of your entire product as a value journey and run this exercise. Really, like, think of what we are changing, what we are bringing. Are we focusing on increased revenue, cost reduction, reduced risk? Because there are like 3 major value propositions generally in B2B, and grind it down to the actual moment in the, we are taking only 4% of the value that we're bringing in. We really need to communicate better. We really need to increase prices. We really need to do something with it. And this is one single line kind of recommendation that I will get: to run this exercise and potentially increase the prices.
I fully agree. So make sure, calculate the value. Don't be afraid of your calculation. This was the second season of
episode.
This was actually the second episode of the second season of Pricing Masters. Make sure to subscribe and see you soon.